Everyone's in.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joel Whitney. Welcome to tonight's discussion of Orbanland, which explores the inner workings of this phenomenon. Just a little under a week before another election in Hungary, we're joined tonight by Lasse Skeet, whose new account bears that same name, Orbanland. It's a remarkable journalist's personal account examining why one small European nation's path away from liberal democracy carries vital lessons for us all. It's been described as an unusually well-balanced, objective account that includes extensive interviews with leading figures from across the political spectrum. Mr. Skeet will be in conversation tonight with Tomek Jankowski. Before we begin, I wanted to welcome you. Once again, I'm Joel Whitney from the Brooklyn Public Library's Arts and Culture team, BPL Presents. And before bringing Lasse and Tomek here, I just wanted to give you a few more ways that you can follow us and see what's coming up, both in person and in these Zoom events that we've been doing, which do have their advantages. Lasse is coming in tonight from Budapest. And so if you want to keep up with us, BPL Presents is our handle on social media. So the website is bklynlibrary.org/BPL Presents. And it's the same on Facebook and Instagram. Twitter, there's an underscore, BPL_Presents. Coming up, we have so much amazing stuff, programs on with writers and more on Magic Molly and more on our exhibit, our Lenape curated exhibit, Lenape Hoking, the original people of New York City, who are showing objects at our Greenpoint branch, and we're doing historical panels throughout the spring. But there's a lot more coming up, including with our partners at Center for Brooklyn History. So without further ado, our guest of honor, Lasse Skeet, is a Danish foreign correspondent who has covered Hungary and Central Europe for almost a decade. Previously based in Copenhagen, London, and New York City, he graduated with journalism degrees from the New School and University of Southern Denmark and has lived in Hungary since 2013. Tomek Jankowski is the author of Eastern Europe, second edition, Everything You Need to Know About the History and More of a Region That Shaped Our World and Still Does. He worked, studied, and traveled in Eastern Europe for years, starting in the late 1980s, holding degrees in history and economics. He's a senior analyst at a research firm where he has authored numerous reports focusing on the region. He and his wife live in Pembroke, New Hampshire, where he's zooming in from. Welcome these both, and keep in mind you'll have a chance to ask some questions in about 30 or 40 minutes. Welcome, Lasse and Tomek.
Thanks, Joel. Indeed. So everyone, I want to thank you for taking the time to spend some time with us. If you're on the East Coast of the US, it's the evening. If you're in Europe, clearly you're not sleeping, and we thank you. So I want to encourage you, so you're having the opportunity to speak with Lasse. As Joel mentioned, this is really an interesting and well thought out and well organized tome on a very interesting topic that I don't know too many others, certainly in English language, have written about. So I encourage you to ask questions. We're going to hold all questions until the end. At about 7:40, we'll start wading through those. But you see that chat button at the bottom of your screen. Use that to put your questions in there, and we'll try to get through them towards the end of our discussion. So, Lasse, great to be talking to you again. So, let me start with a basic question. Why journalism? Why not hairstyling or French 18th century poetry?
I don't know. It sounds like a cliche, but journalism was always a dream for me to be able to go out in the world and learn new things and communicate them back to people back home. So that's what motivated me to start journalism school, and including going to New York and studying at the New School, and then obviously coming to Hungary and try to explore new land for me there. So it's a journey, and it's wonderful.
Indeed. So you just mentioned that. So you're a Danish guy, you're in Hungary. How did that happen?
That's a good question. Obviously, I wanted to go out in the world and wanted to kind of I wanted to go east when everyone was heading west. Got out of journalism school, and a lot of my student buddies were moving to, I mean, from Denmark to London or Brussels and covering interesting issues over there. But I saw some opportunity in Hungary. There was no other Nordic journalist based in Hungary or in this region even. So already at the time, this is back in 2013, there was Orban was already the prime minister of Hungary at the time, and Hungary was increasingly becoming a very interesting country for many reasons. And also, so I ended up not in Budapest where I am now, but I ended up in Debrecen in the east of Hungary, a smaller town, a university city where my wife, my girlfriend at the time, wanted to study. We came both from Copenhagen. She's Icelandic, but we lived there and moved to Hungary and decided to have our base in Debrecen because the medical school, she's now a doctor. She wanted to become a doctor in Hungary, and that's why we ended up there. And looking back, I don't regret not having my base in Budapest. Obviously spent a lot of time here, but Hungary, as many countries, there's a huge difference and also polarization between the big cities and the rural areas. So I kind of got it the other way around than many other journalists in other countries in foreign correspondence. So usually tend to move to the capital, and I was by chance put in a different place from the start. So that was a learningful and meaningful way to get to know this country.
I completely agree. Yeah, Hungary is like France in the sense that there's Paris and there's everything else. Same thing in Hungary. There's Budapest and there's everything else. So you're certainly getting a very different perspective in Debrecen. Okay, well, why this book? Why now?
So the book is my kind of collection of all these thoughts and all my considerations over all these years. I came in 2013 with very little knowledge of Hungary, but learned so much along the way, obviously, and talked to so many different people. And along the way, I also saw that Hungary was representing some of the bigger issues that have become very dominant in the Western world, also polarization, topics like migration, LGBTQ issues. All of these topics were very divisive in Hungary. Viktor Orban was very quick and almost on the forefront on many of these debates. So I was following that, obviously, and then I saw that in other countries, leaders were beginning to do the same. Obviously, in America, Donald Trump was a very close ally to Viktor Orban, and still is. But also in Europe, Brexit motivated me to kind of understand the bigger perspectives on a divided country, a divided society. So you can hear this is a lot of big thoughts, but basically it started from the ground. I wanted to get to know Hungarians. I wanted to understand why they kept voting for Viktor Orban. I thought it was interesting that, you know, in Western media you can only read that this is a horrible, almost a dictatorship, a place where people are brainwashed. And when I came here, it was like total different experience. There's obviously big problems, and we can discuss them later. But my meeting with these ordinary Hungarians were, you know, to a large extent, especially in the east, where Viktor Orban is very, very popular. Hence the title Orbanland. That kind of got me to think, okay, maybe there's something we need to understand. And so it started with me going out and trying to talk to different people. again, there's been other books written on Hungary and on these theoretical analysis of Hungary as a illiberal democracy. That's a term that Viktor Orban used himself first. But I wanted to kind of see it through the people who live here, see it through their eyes, and try to understand their reasons for voting for Viktor Orban or for basically hating Viktor Orban, because that's the two dominant positions here in this very polarized country. So that's where it started, and then obviously I learned a lot going forward. The book is a collection of my meetings with these people, which include also high-rank politicians, but many of these average Hungarians, activists, professors, movie directors, and other authors. So it's a vast and broad collection of different voices that I've gathered in this book, and I think, at least for me, it kind of gives a big understanding of this country, instead of only looking at from, you could say, important but also a little bit abstract concepts like rule of law and corruption. These concepts are also included in the book, but my angle was a little bit different than starting from those topics.
Yeah, it's important perspective, as you say, the voice that is less heard, where we're more books deal with theoretical models. So I think that really is an interesting approach. Tell me about how your book is organized. Let's talk about the guts.
Yeah, so the book is here, and it's divided into 3 parts, basically. So the first part consists of my observations coming as a Danish journalist to this Central European, Eastern European country at a time where the migration wave into Europe was starting to build up and culminated in 2015 with the big refugee and migration crisis, where Viktor Orban built this very famous fence on the southern border to stop this flow of migrants coming into Europe. That was an event that put Viktor Orban on the bigger stage in Europe. Many people were criticizing him for the way he did it and the way he went against the common European decisions, at least at the time. Since then, it's kind of turned around, and people say now that he won the migration question. But also there was a lot of people, not only in Hungary, but also rest of Europe, in America, who saw Viktor Orban as an inspiration for how to deal with the challenges of our time. So first part is about me kind of observing that and trying to understand what was this wave already started out in Debrecen in the East before it became big in the rest of Europe. And I experienced these clashes between local citizens and refugees from the Middle East. So that's a first part, pretty much me trying to sum up all of those experiences. Then the second part is more consisting more of some of the journalistic work I've done over the years. So it's a lot of different reportages from the ground. We get to meet different people, different topics. And the third part, I try to dig a little bit deeper into longer conversations, as I mentioned, with Hungarians with different opinions. So it consists of 16 different interviews, and I call them conversations because as a journalist, normally I would, especially talking to politicians and people with power, I would interrupt them and ask critical questions if they were going, around a question to follow up. But instead, I also call them conversations because I wanted to have a dialogue. I wanted to let them explain their views and continue to give their reasons for why they have this or that opinion, to pro or against Orban. So that's a third part. Many people love that third part because it's it's almost like, sitting next to one of these Hungarian voters or politicians or activists, having a discussion with them, hearing what they have to say. And you could say that the red line through the book is that I wanted to go in with an open mind. I wanted to also the reader to read these articles, and especially the interviews, with an open mind, and trying to listen completely to what people have to say, instead of just blocking someone who is saying something you disagree with. So that's my bigger kind of aim with the book, is I have this idea that if we listen more to the people we disagree with, I think this polarization we see all over our societies, I think we could reduce that a little bit. That's my hope, at least.
Interesting. And as I said, there's great value in that unfiltered voice, I think, that you help bring in this book. So let's take a step back for a moment. If we look at Eastern Europe in terms of population, Russia's the biggest country with 140 million. Ukraine is next with 46 million, 46 million thereabouts, which calls into question current events, actually, or the thinking or the logic around them. Poland is next with about 38 million, and then Romania is fourth with 22 million. Collectively, these four countries, Russia, Ukraine, Poland, and Romania, form about 75% of all of Eastern Europe's population. They're in those countries. Hungary is a country with little less than 10 million, about 9.5 million, not seen as horribly consequential in larger European politics. So give me a sense of why, if you're not Hungarian, if you don't have a personal connection to the country like we do, how is it that, why is this book important? Why should you read this?
You just summed that up. The size of Hungary is, you could say that the country is punching above its weight in the sense of how much it takes up the space of the big European debate. That's already something I noticed back then when I decided to move to Hungary. The reasons for it, I think, first of all, you have to acknowledge that Viktor Orban is a very experienced politician who's been on the scene since he was very young in the late 80s. He came onto the stage as this freedom fighter who wanted to get rid of Russia and the Soviet Union. This was in 89. He was on the Hero Square here in Budapest, and he got from the beginning very famous for this speech that he had. And then, in the 90s, he became prime minister in 98, and then only lasted one term. He wanted to stay in power. He wanted to stay in power also in his party. His party is called Fidesz. It's a party that started out in the late 80s as a you would say maybe liberal party, and since up through the 90s, and especially nowadays, he's moved this party very much to the right. So between 2002 and 2008, he was in opposition, but he stayed as a president of his party because his party is consisting of a lot of very close friends, you could say, people who all studied law together in Budapest back in the 1980s. So there's a big loyalty in the party. So he's been able to keep power, and then in 2010 he became prime minister again in Hungary, as still is. So he's obviously had a lot of time to strategically develop some thoughts and some new ways of trying to maneuver Hungary into being this country on the big stage. I think, to understand a little bit of the background, Hungary has I write a lot about that in the book. The history of Hungary consists of many traumas. So there's many historical events that didn't turn out very well for Hungary, and this is something that really shapes many Hungarian people's mentality and thoughts even recently been a big disappointment towards the West, towards the European Union. It was not what they expected it to be. They didn't catch up to the West as they had hoped for. At least many people think so. And Orban has been able to, so he is from the countryside, and he's been able to kind of, how can you say, I think in those 8 years as in the opposition before he came back to power, he traveled all around the country, rang a lot of doorbells and just talked to people. I think this sounds very obvious, but I think not many politicians do that today. This is probably one of the reasons why some politicians are put into this elite prejudice that people have towards people with power through many years. But Orban has been able to kind of keep his feet on the ground out in the east, in the north and south of the country, where he is very popular. And that's what kind of, that's where I got my curiosity from. Like, how can he, after so many years, still be so popular and get almost half of all the votes in a country that is being criticized so much from abroad? So there's this sense of, I think he has a very good understanding of the countryside and of the ordinary citizen who wants maybe not, well, the most important thing for the average person in the countryside, or even somewhere in Budapest also, is maybe not to speak about freedom of press or corruption or the rule of law. Things that matter more to many of these people are how much money do we have, what's our salary, what's the opportunities we have, is it better than before Orban came to power? And he has been able to lift Hungary up a lot economically, at least a big part of the population, not everyone. So these are all different examples of why I think that Orban has become so popular in Hungary, but also people from outside of Hungary have been looking and seeing, okay, there's a man who keeps getting into office again and again. What can we learn from him? And I think you can like it or not, but a lot of people learned from Viktor Orban. You could, of course, mention Donald Trump. You can mention Nigel Farage, the Brexit protagonist, basically. And you could see Poland, who's been copying many of the policies of Hungary. But also, even in my country, politicians have been acknowledging that, okay, this man is very, very skilled in the way he does politics. So those are all reasons for understanding why Hungary is, such an important inspiration for many people.
Indeed. And if you wandered into the territory of my next question, actually, I wanted to throw names like Marine Le Pen from France, Mario Draghi from Italy. You've mentioned Kaczynski in Poland, Miloš Zeman in the Czech Republic, Alexander Vucic from Serbia, and Erdogan in Turkey. Aside from the normal bilateral relations that Hungary has with these countries, obviously Orban means something more to each of these people. Can you talk a little bit about that in the European context? And of course, there's one name I conspicuously did not include in that group. We'll talk about him in a minute.
All right. Well, so in the European Union, there's been this bloc of 4 countries consisting of Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary. They're called the Visegrad countries. They have been able to establish this very close alliance. We'll talk about how it is now, but for many years it's been they have been able to align their policies and become this powerful voice in the European Union against some of the more Western-minded politicians and policymakers. They have, put values such as religion, conservatism more into, the debate. because Europe is, as America is also, in many ways, but especially amongst younger generation, very progressive and very fast moving. Globalization, of course, plays a huge factor in how Western society has developed over the last few decades. Whereas in this Central European bloc, people have been experiencing things a little bit different, obviously because of the past of the many years with communism. And I think the common factor for these leaders is that they have been able to mobilize a big part of the population in those countries, who are not happy with the way things were going. They were happy first and positive about the European Union membership, but then there was a lot of disappointment that followed. There was a financial crisis in Hungary that really shook up the country a lot. Orban came in 2010 and tried to get Hungary back on track. And he's not been on the forefront in all of this, but they've been able to kind of communicate many of the same strategies to their voters and remains relatively popular and wins the elections. So yeah, I would say that's some of the reasons for that.
Okay, well put, and I think you've anchored it in some interesting areas, especially the economic crisis of 2008. So the other guy, let's talk about him for a minute. In 2014, when the Ukraine crisis really began in Crimea and in the Donbass in the east, Putin asked European countries, Western and Central European countries, not to resell Russian gas to Ukraine, to basically effectively block Ukraine. Only one country followed or answered that call and went along with that. That would be Orban in Hungary. We are at a point today where, well, as you know, earlier this week, President Zelensky in Ukraine had a press conference where he praised and offered some comments about certain European countries, but he got to Hungary and he stopped very dramatically and spent about 10 minutes lecturing Viktor Orban. I think at one point he very dramatically said, "Victor, do you know what's happening in Mariupol?" We saw the news this morning. You mentioned the Visegrad Group and the defense ministers from Poland, the Czech Republic, and Slovakia have refused to come to Budapest for a regularly scheduled meeting. And in effect, the Polish press, as I was reading this morning, was describing this in terms of we're freezing the Hungarians out of the Visegrad Group for now. And they were very blunt. It's because we don't want to be associated with a pro-Putin country. Let's talk about Putin and Orban and his foreign policy in that sense, and what the impact is locally in Hungary.
So when Orban came to power, he very quickly began to look towards the east. So he called it the Eastern opening. This is after the financial crisis, the disappointment of how the European Union and the West had handled that crisis. He met with Vladimir Putin, and since then the connection, especially economically, has been very, very close. But also just the fact that Viktor Orban has been having meetings in Moscow. Putin has been in Budapest more times than any other country has hosted him over the years. So this relationship looked for many years, and until about a month ago, looked like, this was a strategy that Viktor Orban has, decided to put Hungary into because of economic reasons mostly, but also obviously for political reasons. We've seen many of the policies of the Putin regime been copied by Orban's government, maybe in a more Hungarian version of it, including last summer the anti-gay propaganda laws that basically makes it illegal for schools to teach LGBT issues in classes for youngsters below the age of 18. There's other factors including in those laws. And obviously the fact that the media is very much, at least a big part of it, very, very loyal to the government. We have a lot of people with who became very rich, who were friends of Orban and became more and more rich, including his childhood friend who used to be a gas fitter and who is now the richest man in Hungary. And this is within the time frame of less than 10 years. So you've seen these oligarchs develop, you've seen these corruption cases, and obviously there's been many parallels to Russia. And then on this question, you know, the Visegrad group, Poland especially, is very, very critical of any Russian influence and has been for many years. Even though still Hungary and Poland have been able to have a close relationship, but in the past few weeks, and as you mentioned, this alliance is no longer as strong as it was before the war. Everything is suddenly very, very serious. Poland is very much on the front line on the wish to sanction Russia more. Whereas Hungary, and this has been the rhetoric of Orban, and it holds some truth to it, that Hungary is very reliant and dependent on the gas and oil coming from Russia. So is countries like Germany. But obviously with the election coming up in very few days, Orban has been forced to speak very seriously about this. So basically he does not want to sanction Russia. And, well, he supports the other sanctions, but not the one that includes cutting the gas from Russia to Europe, because that would be very expensive for the Hungarians. And in the end, that's Orban's argument, is that Hungary is not on Russia's side, Hungary is not on Ukraine's side, Hungary is on Hungary's side. That's the words of Viktor Orban just the other day. So obviously this is a new situation, especially with Poland being so harsh on the comments towards Hungary. And I think even if Viktor Orban wins the election on Sunday, he would have a very different situation after the election, with, you know, already losing friends like Trump, Netanyahu in Israel, and then if this Visegrad group falls apart, then Orban stands very much alone in Europe. So before I conclude anything on that, I would say that Orban has before been able to surprise everyone. So it's always too early to conclude anything on this prime minister. But, you know, everything points to the fact that the situation seems very different and very much puts Orban in, you know, standing very much alone in Europe. Yeah.
It's an interesting dynamic, and I have to say that, you know, coming from the Polish side, the historic relationship between Poland and Hungary has been very strong. So this is really unusual for these harsh words coming out of Warsaw for Orban. So, okay, I'm conscious of the time here. I definitely want to hit a few more nail heads with you. One of them is when I was a student, back during the time I was a student in Hungary in the late 80s, early 90s, in the midst of that, the Serb-Croat War broke out, and the city I was in, Pécs, is in the southwest of the country, in Baranya County, bordered back then what was in Yugoslavia, is today Croatia. I remember the local news reporting that there were some 80,000 Croatian refugees in Baranya County alone at that time. I remember local shops would often write shop signs in Croatian as well as Hungarian, you know, Zatvareno, closed, that type of thing. And then, of course, we come to today, where Hungary, according to the BBC this morning, Hungary has absorbed some 350,000 Ukrainian refugees. not quite the 1.8 million that Poland has, but that's a huge number. In 1956, it was about 400,000 Hungarians who fled Hungary when the revolution collapsed. So this is all extraordinary when you consider, as you alluded to earlier, how Orban behaved in 2015 with a very different refugee crisis. And as you said, it really made a name for him. You started talking a bit about this, and I know you write at length about this in your book. Can you talk about that event, those events for Orban and what they meant?
Well, so 2015 and 2022, from the neutral outside, it could look like it's basically the same situation. Why does Hungary not want to take in any people in 2015, and now they're taking in, coming up to 500,000? And Orban said, and this is something I write about in the book, the political correctness is non-existent in Orban's circles. This is refreshing sometimes, but on this topic, he said that it's not rocket science that we would not let in 2015 was primarily young men from the Middle East coming far away from, and nowadays it's women and it's children, and it's coming from a neighbor country, and they're Christian, so why shouldn't we help them? This is like, that's the logic, and this may sound cynical, but many Hungarians, I know this because I asked these questions in the last couple of weeks to many people, they agree with it. It's like, sounds like common sense. These people coming from the Middle East, were Muslim. We know from Western experience that it's very hard to integrate Muslims. This is, not my words, but many of the people I've talked with.
Sure.
Whereas today, refugees coming from a neighbor country, a Christian country, it's a whole other situation. So this is just a straightforward difference there is between then and now.
Absolutely, and kind of there's some irony in that in Pécs in the 1980s, the Turkish government and the Hungarian government had worked together to restore a mosque, a 16th century Ottoman Turkish mosque that was still functioning, not just as a museum, but was a functioning mosque. But times change, obviously. Okay, I'm going to read a very quick quote from Freedom House. Now, Freedom House is a non-profit organization based in Washington. Ostensibly, they're an independent organization, sort of a think tank. The reality is the majority shareholder is the U.S. government. I'll just throw that out there, so take that into context. But they do evaluate countries around the world based on human rights and based on democracy. So here's a quote written last year about 2020 in Hungary. And it goes, Prime Minister Viktor Orban's government in Hungary has dropped any pretense of respecting democratic institutions. After centralizing power, tilting the electoral playing field, taking over much of the media, and harassing critical civil society organizations since 2010, Orban moved during 2019 to consolidate control over new areas of public life, including education and the arts. The 2020 adoption of an emergency law that allows the government to rule by decree indefinitely has further exposed the undemocratic character of Orban's regime. Hungary's decline has been the most precipitous ever tracked in nations in transit, and nations in transit is their democracy index. It was one of the 3 democratic frontrunners as of 2005, but in 2020, it became the first country to descend by 2 regime categories and leave the group of democracies entirely. That's one assessment. My question to you then, Lasse, is given everything you've been talking about, and again, that individual Hungarian voice that you bring into your book, how should we, in a very hyper-polarized, tribalized world, where it's very easy to put people like Orban into certain buckets, how do we think about him, and how do we understand both what he means and going forward as we look at and we're going to talk about the elections coming up soon?
It's a very good question. I try to answer it in my book as well, with a little bit of how can I say it? I think the way we should understand Orban is that he is a man who very much he wants Hungary to become a successful country. But I also think that over the past few years, and going back to some of the sentences you just mentioned, I think it's gone a little bit out of hand, to say the least. And the way that the situation is now, I think, because of the isolation of Orban, the new rule of law mechanism from the European Union that makes them able to punish Hungary economically, I think these are some factors that would make Orban sure that it cannot continue this way. I think more and more voters in Hungary are aware of it. The problem in Hungary especially has to do with the media, and the people in large parts of society do not hear about these things. They do not, when they hear about it, maybe they don't understand what it means for their country. I think this is the biggest problem, and I think the obvious answer would be to better educate Hungarians, and this goes for many countries because we see these trends in other countries as well. Make young people more engaged in politics. Try to, as I want with my book, try to not just and now I said isolate, but do not isolate people in the normal citizens. Go and talk to them, discuss with them, have a mutual discussion where you exchange different views and try to listen to what people have to say for their reasons, and then go into a debate. And this is of course not a very easy, and it's a very very big task, and doesn't just change. Even if Orban loses the election on Sunday, it won't change on Monday. So this is a very important task for all of us, not just journalists, but every citizen in every country, I think, has to go out and speak with the people you think should change their mind, and don't just tell them what to think, but go listen to what they have to say, and then give better arguments for why they should change their mind.
Let me, I'm going to try to pin you down a little bit there. So, and this is sort of me thinking aloud as well. So a lot of my friends, my contacts in Hungary are really in the academic world, quite frankly. Many of them, so given that, you can probably guess how they're going to vote on Sunday, where they're going to land on that. How would you pitch this book to them? What's the value to them of this book, other than, look, I already know that, the people, the Hicksters in the South and the Southeast are going to vote for Orban. So I need to, I know everything I need to know.
Yeah. I think it can maybe work as a reminder that, the way people vote is not always to do with how things should be, with what democracy should look like, with how our theories about things, you just mentioned the Freedom House report, which is very important, and it's really not to neglect it. But if you only sit and talk to your other professor friends, I'm not saying this to you, but to academics in general, then you're just going to create your own bubble, and you're never going to change the minds of the people in the countryside who don't work in the academic world.
Interesting. We have some questions coming in. I have one or two more for you myself, Lasse, but folks, I want to remind you, please put your questions, comments, thoughts, anything we said that's provoked you or interesting, was something that you want to know more about. Now's your opportunity. The guy's here live, and he's up. It's coming up on 2 a.m. for him. Put your questions in the chat below, and we will try to hit them. Lasse, let's talk about the election that's coming up. What's going to happen? Crystal ball me.
So I think, just very briefly, I think Viktor Orban will win the election, but I think, and we'll delete this from the video on Sunday if it doesn't happen.
Yeah, we'll record over this if it turns out differently.
But I don't think he'll be able to get his 2/3 majority in parliament again. I think the opposition, because it's been able to unite, they will get a better result than in the previous elections. So that also means going forward, Orban will not have the same maneuver space as he's been used to in the past 12 years. First, when the war broke out, I thought, this will change everything. This has to change the Fidesz voters' minds on Russia, and I think it has changed their mind. This is not a report I have seen, but I've heard it from a colleague that around 44% of Fidesz voters were pro-Russian just 6 months ago. Now it's down to 10%. So Fidesz has changed their minds on Russia, and so has Orban in his communication. He's been able to reshape his narrative. And if you look at the polls, he's not lost in any of the polls I have seen, and not lost more than 1% at the most. In other polls, he's gained support. So that's some of my reason for this prediction. But we'll see how it goes. There's still a lot of undecided voters on Sunday.
You obviously are just horribly wrong, but we'll see, unfortunately. Okay, one more question for me. I see you've got some other questions piling up here quick. So let's talk very quickly about Peter Markizai. I know you've spoken with him. What is his view of this, and what do you think about him? And we should also mention, by the way, that he comes from the southeast of the country.
He comes from the southeast, and he is conservative. He's a Catholic. He's the father of 7. Orban has only 5 kids. So this is the opposition prime minister candidate. The opposition has been, as I mentioned, able to unite from all the way from Jobbik, which is his former right-wing party, all the way out to the left wing, and he's the prime minister candidate. I met him just 2 days ago, and he is very optimistic. He won he became mayor of his small town in 2018. That was the first time he was able to unite the other parties behind him, and they copied that strategy in the local elections in 2019. So this is the third time where the opposition is trying to do this. And he said to me, and he said that in other media as well, he said, well, I've never won a poll, but I've never lost an election. So he's very, very optimistic in that sense.
Interesting. Okay, let's try to get through some of these questions that are coming in. I'll take the simplest first. Dude Modero.
Jeg hørte ikke det først. En kicsit beszélek magyarul, igen.
Okay, so the question was, does he speak fluent Hungarian? He answered he does speak some, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wish I could speak it even better.
It's a bear of a language to get your hands around. I'll tell you that. That's for sure. Okay, so how about let me see. I think about the pros and cons of the European community expelling Hungary if Orban continues. What do you think, and what is his base? Rural and small town population, working class?
This is part of his base, but Orban's economic policies with low taxes, big investments, good opportunities for companies to expand, also gives him a large part of his support from the middle class, from the upper class as well. They are actually the ones maybe who benefited the most from his policies. So it's not only the small village old people who vote for Orban. It's more nuanced than that.
And
just you could compare it to the Trump voter in that sense, I think.
I was going to ask you exactly that. Just very quickly. So one, I think, contrast between, let's say, the American right wing politically and the Hungarian is that Orban is not against, for instance, public health insurance, so public healthcare system.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, big state is almost a banned word on the right wing in the States. But in Hungary, the state has taken a very large role in contributing to with different social policies, including especially family policy, which makes up a lot of the budget, a state budget. A lot of, for example, if you are a woman and you have 4 kids, you don't have to pay income tax. So there's these different motivations for changing the demographic development in Hungary. So that's definitely a spot where there's a difference to the American right wing.
Okay, so just kind of switching gears quickly here. So you mentioned the economy earlier. So I'll read the question. Has the economy of Hungary and the economic status of its citizens changed for the better or worse under Orban? I'll also remind you, I think it was it 2012, 2013, where Hungary actually was rated by the rating agencies. It was given a junk bond or junk credit rating status. Orban has recovered from that, but go ahead, please.
It's a very big question. Try to answer it shortly. Yes, the economy every year, except from 2020, since then, has been a year of growth, and not only that, but a year of more growth than in almost any other European Union country. Obviously, coming from a lower starting point, but Hungary is catching more and more up. I think they just, in terms of, I'm not sure, but if it was BNP per capita, just overtook Portugal recently. So a lot of people do have more opportunities economically today than they had before Orban came in. But there's a big part of the society who are not benefiting from these from this progress. Especially, you could mention the big Roma minority who live in the poor areas of smaller villages. They very much seem to have, if not the same, then maybe even worse situation than 10 years ago. This is something I write about also in the book. I meet a Roma activist who's trying to change things, and it's very much uphill.
Indeed, Roma activism was brand new when I was living there back in the 80s. Okay, so here's a broader question. You have touched on this very big problem of people not speaking to understanding people that are not in your tribe. What do you think is most important to understand to be able to do this? How do you cross bridges?
I mean, it takes a lot of time, and time is not the source of our day. So it's complicated. I'm as a journalist privileged to have it as my job to go out and speak to people. But there are different initiatives, including in the States. There is the All Sides website, where you, for example, you go in and you can read different versions of the same news story from a right-wing perspective, from a left-wing perspective. So instead of just reading from the same media confirming your views, you should try to maybe read some news stories from other media outlets than the usual ones. This is something I do a lot. Obviously, go to places, talk to people, and when they say they vote for this or that person, instead of just shake your head, maybe be a little bit more curious. But it's a very idealistic approach to spend time with people in this way. But I think if everyone did it, things would be better.
We used to do it better than we do now, that's for sure. Okay, one last question I think we have time for. Let's address this one. So I'm going to skip the first part of this, but just get to the question part of this. If Putin is weakened or eliminated by his own people or by somebody, would there be a better chance of getting rid of Orban? Or do you think let's rephrase that slightly and say, do you think he would fare worse in Hungary?
I'm not sure I understand that. Can you rephrase the
So,
question one more
So
time?
basically, imagine a world where Putin is removed from power. How does Orban fare in that world?
I mean, we already talked about standing alone, and you have to say that the difference between the Russian system and the Russian society and the Hungarian equivalent is big. So in people, I mean, politicians do not get killed in Hungary. I think there is a democratic way to remove him. It takes different strategies, and I wish I could come up with some solutions for that. But the European Union are doing a lot of things. The NGOs in Hungary are trying to do their best, and you know, the opposition is stronger than it has been for many years. So I think removing Orban wouldn't take a revolution in the same way as, and it wouldn't necessarily turn the whole country around as it would in Russia, probably. I'm not sure I answered your question, but
you kind of wandered in that direction, but it's basically, I think I'll say that I agree that we need to honor the democratic process. That's more important. The institutions, for as much as Orban hasn't, they're still important. And going forward, I think personally, I'll just add that in a world that, you know, it's astonishing how many people in Hungary today speak English, certainly compared to, you know, 40 years ago. So if you're interested in this topic, reach out, reach out to some Hungarians. There are lots of forums and talk about this stuff. As Lasse says, I think engaging people is the best way. So Lasse, we are just about at the time here. Lasse, thank you so much for this discussion, and thank you for putting this interesting book together. I encourage everyone to give it a read and to engage people about it. Use it to further your own understanding and discussions. So I'm Tomek. Lasse, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and have a good evening in the States.
Indeed, and night for you. Joel, over to you.
Thanks so much to both of you. Good night, everyone.